Hi folks, this is your instructor, Dr. Ben Pundit. Welcome to week 2. Congratulations, you survived the week 1. Now moving on to week 2. So week 2 is one of the daunting tasks, one of daunting information that you have to learn, and a lot of this, especially with this week, a lot of students actually have problem with this section because it's kind of so foreign, things that you actually don't see on a daily basis unless you work in a research field or work with immunologists. For the most part, you won't see this and you won't usually have to deal with it. So what I would recommend with this, a lot of people actually trying to read and trying to understand and have a hard time understanding the concept, just understanding the information that you have, because there's so much information. So my recommendation to you is try to understand the bigger picture first, trying to understand things from a macro perspective, like stepping back and seeing the whole picture, and then dive into those pictures. Once you understand the process, once you know the character of these immune system. So that's what I would recommend for you to do. Okay. Also, I would recommend looking at my cheat sheet, or not cheat sheet, but a key terms that you should know from this chapter. Okay, those key terms, I want you to print them out, and then as you listen to this video, I want you to kind of go over them, write them down in your own word, in your own term, so you understand them better. Okay, so in order for you to understand immune system really well, you have to understand the bigger picture and then go deep into the smaller details. Okay, in order for that to work. Okay. Okay, without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, let's get to it and see what you come up with. Okay, so to start off with immunity. Immunity actually divided into two categories. So, and you know what? From this point on, I'm going to skip. I'm not going to use the PowerPoint that you have because I don't really like those PowerPoint. It's just so dry, too boring. So I created my own PowerPoint. So I want you to kind of follow this video by looking at my PowerPoint instead. Okay, so immune system, kind of divided into two sections. This is kind of general concept. You just need to understand these concepts. One, we call it innate. So the word innate, just think of like something that you're born with, like you actually are born with this thing. You come out from your mom with this thing. So this is innate. Whereas you have adaptive acquire. So this is something that you, as you grow along, as you become seasoned on this planet, you actually kind of pick up a few things and you learn a few things as you acquire them. Okay, so think of in terms of diseases and things like that as you acquire them. So what's the difference between these two? Okay, so what's the difference between these two? For innate, you think of feverishly fast. So think of something that is come on quickly. It's a cute kind of thing. So if you have a bug coming in into your system, you might get infection right away. It may take a few minutes or few hours for you to actually see the symptoms right away. You may have fever because that innate response, something attacking you, and you're trying to kill it by increasing the temperature of your body. Okay. So innate, just also remember the term non-specific. So think of these guys like your immune system just kind of killing people left and right. There's no specific person that they're trying to kill. So they just kill everyone. Good guy, bad guys, they just kill them all. There are a few of these folks kind of patrol around in your body, in your blood, that when they see any foreign stuff, or even sometimes kill their own people as well. So they are non-specific. Okay, they have no memory cells. They don't make memory, so they just think of like they have these short-term memory, 10-second Tom kind of folks. So they just like, oh, you knew. Who are you? If I don't know you, I'm gonna kill you. So that's the innate one. Okay, so these guys are also quick respond. Like I said, they are quick. They're feverishly fast, so they do things very quickly. Okay, we consider them as a first line of defense. We're going to go down into different type of defense shortly, but they are first line of defense. Okay, so adaptive is opposite to innate. Innate is feverishly fast. Opposite to that is delay respond. Takes a while. These are folks that are kind of slow. Think of them, if you think of innate like rabbit or hare, the adaptive would be a turtle. So literally it takes a while. So these folks could take days to weeks before they respond to you. Okay, they just ghosting you basically. They just gone for a while before they respond. Okay, they just ghosting you completely. Okay, so these folks are in opposite to innate. These folks are specific. They actually very, very specific. So they know who to kill. They know exactly who to kill. They not just kill people randomly. They know exactly who to go to and who to kill. Okay, they have memory cells. These folks remember, like, oh, if you come back, if I see you again, I will hunt you down because I know who you are. And if you come back, you step this, if you foot in my town again, I will hunt you down. Okay, so, and they are slow respond. So delay or slow comparing to innate is fast. So they are slow respond, long lasting though. They actually last for a long, long time. And we're going to talk about all of these. Okay, so keep in mind, this is just a general ideas between innate versus adaptive. Innate versus adaptive. Now we're going to go into each one. We're going to go in and talk about innate. Adaptive, I want you to think of second line of defense, but I don't want to kind of cross that term because that term will come on a little bit later on. So these are more like a second or third line of defense. These are the backup guy. Backup folks. So these like infantry. These are the frontline folks. This is the backup folks. Okay, this is your cavalry that's coming in after these guys cannot handle it. Then the cavalry would come in and respond. Okay. So first one is innate. When we talk about innate, first line of defense, think of it like a first bunker or first line right in our border. This is where we fight wars right on the border. So this is first line of defense. You have these massive folks roaming around trying to catch things very quickly. First line of defense kind of break down into two. You have chemical versus physical barriers. Chemicals are like your tears, your lysozyme in your tear, it kills bacteria. So lysozyme, think of Lysol. Lysol kills stuff. So lysozyme kill any bacteria or anything that's in your tear. And also, you have chemicals that lower your pH in your stomach, in your mouth, in your vaginal canal. All of those is a chemical barrier. Whereas physical is actually actual physical that create barriers like walls. So think of your skin, okay, like your ciliated cell in your throat. You have lining in your GI tract. That's part of it, your physical barrier. Goblet cells, this is one of the things in your trachea that's preventing infection. Bacteria, viruses go straight down into your lungs. These actually make a little escalator. If something gets down there, it actually bring it up your trachea all the way out. Okay, so prevent things to go down. Even with that, you have viruses and disease that actually get down to your lungs. So other stuff like would be coughing, vomiting. All of these are physical barriers that we do, and vomiting could be chemicals as well because of the lower pH in your stomach as well. Okay, so there's a lot of these that you actually born with already. You don't need to focusly do anything. Your body actually build that barrier from you and your enemy. Okay, so that's innate. The second line of defense is part, again, this is the term that I want to cross. Second line for innate, this is part of the innate, still part of the innate. Some of these do cross over to the adaptive or acquire. Okay. So part of the second part, aside from the actual barrier in your body, you actually have the immune response, meaning that your body will produce an immune system to fight infection. We will talk about macrophages, dendritic cells, leukocytes. I'm gonna actually show you a video of complement. I won't cover it in here because it's quite a complex system, and there's actually a video on YouTube that explains it really well, so I want you guys to watch those one. T cells can be both. T cell could be considered as an innate, also considered as a adaptive response, and we'll talk more about that. Okay, so macrophage, dendritic cell is considered what we call antigen presenting cell. We're going to cover that shortly. The other thing that it does with the innate response is vasodilation. So when I cover how the bacteria comes into your body, you're going to see that vasodilation play out. Something to remember, actually is really good to know for your tests, is histamine reaction. This is caused by mast cells. So when you think of mast cells, this is the mast cells. Mast cells will cause histamine reaction. Okay, so put that in your head. Mast cells, histamine reaction. Okay, what causes vasodilation? You have PG, prostaglandin, nitric oxide, and also magnesium. All of these actually help dilate your blood vessels. We're going to talk about why in just a second. Why do you need to dilate your blood vessels? Okay. So kind of recapping from what I just mentioned to you. So between an innate versus adaptive. Okay, innate versus adaptive. So we already go into what innate is and what innate actually is, and we're gonna go deeper to kind of see what kind of players do you have with these. Okay, so now we're gonna go through adaptive, which is acquire something that you kind of pick up along the way throughout. Okay, so there are two sides, and most textbook and most places on the internet or YouTube, they tend to write it the humoral first and then cell-mediated second. But I like to write this way because technically speaking, with the cell-mediated, this one is kind of connects to the innate. So if you were to draw like this, if you draw innate and you divide innate into two, okay, innate into two, you have the first and second line of defense, and then you have the third, which is the adaptive or acquire type response. The cell-mediated, the T cell, is right in the middle between the innate and the adaptive response. So T cell will be right here, kind of in the middle between innate and adaptive. So T cell can be considered as innate, and T cell can be considered as adaptive as well. So as B cells. Okay, so we're going to cover all of these. Okay, T cells. Under T cells, you have naive T cells. These are, when we say naive, okay, that means that they're not prone to. Does mean they're not prone to environment, but rather it actually means that they just brand new. They actually brand new. So just think of like a virgin or inactive okay, inactive type of T cells. Same thing with B cells, so you have virgin or inactive B cells. And they go through these things called clonal selection, clonal expansion, clonal deletion, and then they go into T helper cells, cytotoxic T cell, regulatory T cells, and memory T cells. Humoral, again, they have B cells, and then the B cells produce antibodies, A, D, E, G, M, and then it goes to memory B cells. And last but not least, we will talk about natural killer on the separate note. Technically speaking, they're not truly humoral, but they actually work with IgG, and then that's a natural killer cell. We'll talk about that. Okay, you're like, wait a minute, Dr. P. This is too much. I still have not got anything. I still confused. I have no clue what you're talking about. You just start listing all of these things down. I have no clue. Don't worry. Okay, I will explain this in just a few seconds. This will make it a lot clearer. I'm just now listing out the players, characters. Okay, characters for you. So as you go through this, I want you to remember immunology can be fun and can be easily understood. The reason you have a hard time understanding them because you cannot relate it to them. If you cannot relate it to them, then it's going to be harder for you to understand. So just like any movie, like let's say you go into a theater and you actually watch a movie. Let's say you watch Avenger, okay, the Endgame, okay. Let's say when you come out, okay, the first thing that you really care about is the plot. Okay, if I ask you what is the plot, you should be able to tell me what the plot of the movie is. Same thing with this. Same thing with pathology. When you have a difficult concept, ask yourself, what is the plot? What is the story here? What kind of story can I make? Okay, what is the story there to be made? And after you kind of know the story, you kind of know the beginning, the middle, and the ending, then you could start learning the character, each character, what they do. Oh yeah, that main character, this is that name, this name, Thanos, Iron Man. So then you start learning about character and what they do, what kind of personality they have, what kind of function do they have. And this is what I want you to do as we get along here, as we go along with this. Trying to think of a bigger plot. As I tell you the plot of this, think of all these things, and I will show you and I will remind you of these, and then we're going to go back and look at these characters, look at these things, what they do, okay? And I want you to kind of take note of that. Okay, here we go. So let's see these guys in action. Let's see what happened in your real life. Okay, so here we go. So first, you have the invasion. Let's say, again, you have a little tiny cut. You start bleeding. You have a tiny cut on your arm. Okay, so look deep into it. Now, the bacteria start creeping in. Again, if you remember from our first slide, here we go. Our first slide is on the bottom there. You could see in the first line of defense. So your skin is what type of barrier? If you say physical, that's great. Yes, your skin is a physical barrier. Once your skin is compromised, then we have to go through the second line of defense. Right? Second line of defense. So this is the blood vessel right here. This is the blood vessels. You have the cut here. Oh, pretend this is the cut here. Right, little cut on your arm. You have these bacteria start creeping inside your body. These bacteria creeping in. And one thing about bacteria is if you have a few, maybe a few hundred, a few thousand, it's not that bad. It's actually going to die by itself eventually. So don't have to worry too much about if it's in a few number. But the problem is these bacteria, when they start replicating, when they start doubling it up, okay? So we're going to go into the second line of defense. So the problem becomes when these bacteria start doubling up. You could see them start to double up, okay? That's become a problematic to the host, okay? So bacteria, anything foreign that coming into your body, we call it pathogen or antigen. Okay, just remember those terms. Antigen, okay, antigen, okay, antigen. So just think of it like anti-genetic, anti-you. Genetics mean you, like you as a person. So it's anti-you. So it's not truly you. It's someone else, something else that doesn't belong in your body. So that's what antigen is. Okay, a lot of people tend to get that term confused with the antibodies. Antibody and antigen are two different terms, and actually they do opposite things. One is something that you produce, is something that your body produces, and the other one is something bad that's coming into your body. Okay, so don't get that confused. Antigen, bad guys are coming in, pathogens. Okay, so the first guy I want you to know, this guy here, so you could just write them down. This is macrophage. Oh, oh, sorry, let's see. Macrophage. Okay, so macrophage, I always think of them as Pac-Man. Pac-Man. Why? Because they eat up bacteria. They eat up bad guys. Okay, so this is when Pac-Man has, eat that little blue square. They become a super Pac-Man and they could eat the ghost. So same thing. So Pac-Man start eating the ghost. As you can see, even this picture looks just like Pac-Man eating the bacteria. The process is called phagocytosis. Phagocytosis. So eating up bacteria. Again, if you remember innate response, when we talk about innate, it's not specific. So phagocytosis and macrophage are not specific to a bacteria. It could actually eat your own cells as well. It could eat any cells, even good cell, bad cell. It could actually swallow them up and then kill it. So these guys are quick to respond. They just eat everything that's actually not you. So they eat good or bad guy. There's a good bacteria, they'll eat good bacteria as well. They'll eat bad bacteria, so they'll eat everyone. Okay, so, but remember the second part of the response here is vasodilation. Vasodilation. So what this macrophage, this Pac-Man also does is send information to your blood vessels. So Pac-Man macrophage is usually normally live in a blood vessel, kind of patrolling around, and once they see this cut, they start to come out from the blood vessels first. They're the first responder, so they think of them like, firefighter or the EMT folks. They're at scene first, folks, and they start eating stuff. They start killing these bacteria. But the second thing they do is they release prostaglandin and nitric oxide. What that does is they actually vasodilate your blood vessel. Why do you think they would need to vasodilate your blood vessels? Well, if you vasodilate your blood vessel, that means you bring more help. You actually bring more infantry. You bring more Pac-Man. You bring more macrophage to help fight these bacteria. The second thing it does is actually cause a leakage. Okay, they cause this water to come out from your blood. Okay, and the waters start to seep out like that. Okay, and water does a couple of things. One, it actually slow down these bacteria. These water slow down these bacteria, kind of contain it to one area, doesn't let it spread anywhere else. And from the human perspective, the way we're gonna see it as a swelling. This is why when you have a cut, just a few minutes later you actually see the swelling because of this water coming out from your blood vessels to kind of slow down these bacteria. The second thing that it does with this water is also bring help, actually pave the road. Remember, macrophage could go out into the cells very easily, but your other immune system, your leukocytes, your other white blood cells will have a hard time going into the battlefield. So this is the battlefield. So they will have a hard time because it's not like the blood. And actually, they're used to the blood. Majority of your blood is water. So they're used to the blood. By letting the water out, it actually kind of paved the road for them to actually go out and fight these diseases. So it does a couple of things. Like I said, the water slow down the bacteria, but the water also help bring other folks to the field. Okay, make it more mobile. Okay, for the other folks. Okay, so let's say the bacteria, the macrophage, can only contain it, the bacteria start to multiplying faster than these macrophages are eating them. Okay, much faster than they're actually eating them. So what does macrophage do? Macrophage then send information to grab a leukocyte. Okay, grab leukocyte. So this is the second thing that it does. Macrophage recognize what kind of problem do we have. If we have a bacteria problem, okay, if we have this is the bacteria problem, then they're gonna get what a neutrophil. Whoa, what happened with my writing? No. So you could note that yourself. I'm not sure what happened to my pen. So neutrophils. So N for neutrophil. Doesn't even want to say N there. Here we go. So N for neutrophil. If it's viruses, then they would actually use lymphocyte. Okay, so just think of lymphocyte is the viruses. So viruses is lymphocyte, and bacteria is neutrophils. Okay, so they would call out the neutrophils, they would call out the lymphocyte based on what these guys are. So in this case, we have a bacteria, so we can actually call the neutrophil guys to come in. Neutrophils are quite interesting. Neutrophil is quite interesting. Neutrophil goes up. You will learn this. Just something to remember now. Neutrophil goes up. Level of neutrophil goes up when you have bacterial infection. So when you run your differentials, if you see your neutrophil level goes up, that means there's a bacterial infection going on. If your lymphocyte goes up, that means there's viral infection going on. Okay, so something to note. So neutrophil is quite interesting. They are what I consider them as a suicide bomber. Suicide bomber. So these folks will come in because who calls them? Yes, macrophage called them. Okay, macrophage call these folks to come here. So they send signal message, a protein message to call these neutrophils to come over. With neutrophils, the reason I call them a suicide bomber, sometimes for the most part they actually kill similarly to macrophage. They actually eat them one at a time and then start lysing them with phagocytosis and breaking them down. But after a few times, what happened is these neutrophils, what they do is they actually gobble a whole bunch of bacteria up. Will gobble a large amount of bacteria inside their body. These guys are pretty big. If you look at microscopically, they're bigger than other your other blood cells, your red blood cell, your platelets. So they're huge. So they gobble tons and tons of bacteria, and they actually kill themselves. Yes, they kill themselves. So they gather hundreds and hundreds of bacteria, and then they start killing themselves. When they kill themselves, they kill the bacteria too. So this is why I call them a suicide bomber, because they would go and just gobble up tons of bacteria and then detonate to kill themselves and to kill the bacteria that's inside them. So this is one of the ways they kill the bacteria. Okay, so most often time these two guys kind of hold down the fort. Most often time these two guys just kind of hang in there, hold down the fort. You have the macrophages, you have neutrophils. They're happy, they're good, good team. They hold down the fort pretty well. But let's say in this case these bacteria just being stubborn, they just cannot go away. You just have to do something to kind of get them go away. Okay, so what macrophage then do next, the next step is they call for the brain of the operation. They call this the brain of the operation. They call dendritic cells. Dendritic cells. So I always think of dendritic cell as kind of barbarian. Okay, barbarian folks. Okay, so dendritic cell like barbaric folks. So a dendritic cell is called APC, antigen presenting cells. What does that mean? What is antigen presenting cell? This is the reason I call them barbaric. Because what they do, they actually take one of these bacteria, they kill it. They kill this bacteria. There's one. All they need is one. They take one bacteria, they kill it, and they torn it into pieces. And they torn it into pieces, and they wear it on their heads. Okay, they torn it into little pieces, wear on their head. If you think of in like a human term, it's like someone just killed their enemy, and they cut their enemy into pieces, and then wear them. You know, wearing the head, the fingers, the neck, the claw, the hand. So they just wear them on their body. Okay, so this is what APC does. Is actually take one little bacteria or viruses, either one, and then they just torn it into little pieces, and then their job is not here. Actually, their job is not there to fight. They do fight every now and then. They could fight these bacteria as well. They could kill some of these bacteria, but their main job is not to fight these bacteria. So what they do is they leave the battlefield. These guys go into the blood, back into the bloodstream, and they travel. Okay, they travel for days. Okay, for days on end into the bloodstream. Okay, and this is where we go into the next part. Go into the third line of defense, which is the adaptive or acquired immune system. So now we have the dendritic cells. Would travel usually would take them about 2 to 3 days to get to the nearest lymph node. Okay, get to the nearest lymph node. So they would travel. Look at that! Travel a long way with their little bacteria right here, still hanging around their neck that they killed, and they put it. It's completely dead. They put it around their body. Okay, travel to the nearest lymph node. Okay. The first portion on the outside of the lymph node, what they will find is they will find T cells. They will find what we call naive T cells, or you could think of as a virgin T cells or inactive T cells. Okay, little backstory. Before these guys come to the lymph node, the T cell T is for thymus. Okay, all of your T cells and all of your B cells actually were produced in bone marrow. Both of them were produced in bone marrow, in your bone. Okay, your bone marrow produced T cells and B cells. Very important to know. We often ask you, where do they mate? Where do they mate? They mate in your T cells and B cells were made in your bone marrows. Okay, where does T cells mature? T cell mature in your thymus. T for thymus. So thymus is a little fat pad right on top of your heart. So thymus is a little endocrine gland on top of your heart, and that's where they mature. That's where your T cells mature, and then being distributed to the rest of your lymph node in your body. Okay, so your T cells, think of T cells is like this robot. I compare them to Eve from WALL-E movie. So Eve, you have these tons of these T cells lying in the lymph node, inactive, completely inactive. That's why we call them naive, because they're inactive, completely inactive. Okay, so these this APC or dendritic cells, same thing, APC, dendritic cells of barbarian, have to do is to go one by one to find the right match, the right match. So what they do is they're gonna go and test out to see which one of this little bug that this guy carry, which one would actually fit into a little keyhole in one of these T cells. Okay, only one will match. Only one will match. Okay, that this has a specific key, specific code to it. It will not match everyone. Okay, this process is called clonal selection. Clonal selection. So clonal selection. The term clonal, you could see, is clone. All of these T cells are clone, but these T cells, when it clone, is actually have a little bit different key to them. Each one has a specific key, like this, like your car. You need a specific key to start your car. This one has specific different keys in order. Even though they're cloned, but they have different keys. So you have to find a specific one that actually would respond to this bacteria. Okay, so that's a clonal selection. So once the APC or dendritic cell, once dendritic cell find the right T cells, the right naive T cells, once they go and then attach and start the car, and voila. Then, once they activated these T cells, find the right key and become activated. Okay, then you're gonna see what we call clonal duplication. Okay, or expansion, clonal duplication or expansion. So this little T cell, just one of them, gonna go crazy. They're gonna go crazy once you get them started. Once you activate them, they gonna go crazy. They just start replicating itself over and over and over again. They actually produce millions, hundreds of thousands and millions. So they just keep reproducing itself over and over and over again. Okay, so this is the term clonal selection, clonal expansion, clonal duplication. All of these mean the same thing. That means you have one T cells, one is get activated. Once it's activated, then you start duplicating yourself. You start repeating. You start making the same copy of yourself over and over again until you get to hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Okay, or millions. Okay, the process is not end there, but that's the end of the journey for the dendritic cells. That's all they need to do. So if I ask you, if the question asks who activate T cells, T cells are activated by dendritic cell or APC, antigen presenting cell. The barbarian activate these T cells. Okay, so what's the difference between naive cells versus active T cells? Naive cells are inactive. They are not active. They are just not working. They're just in a storage, in a lymph node, in a storage in a lymph node. Okay, the story doesn't end there. So these are T cells, folks. So T cells divided into 4 groups. Okay, 4 groups. The first group, okay, the most important group of them all, yes, the most important group of them all, you should know this one. Most important group is the T helper cell, T helper cells. T helper cells. Okay, T helper cell. So what I want you to remember, T helper cells, which is the main group that they divided into. Okay, they are like cheerleaders or water boy. Okay, they all they do is are like nurses. They supporting people. They actually cheering you on. Say, don't die. Just keep going. Don't die. Hang in there. You almost there. Okay, so they support everyone. They support every single cells. They support other cells like neutrophils, they support macrophages, they support B cells. But the most important job of all of this that you need to remember, that these guys activate B cells. Okay, so T helper cells activate B cells. A huge key to remember. Okay, so T helper cells, they activate B cells. Another thing to remember is T helper cells has to do with CD4. T helper cell has to do with CD4. They have a CD4 coding with them. And this is very reason why people who have HIV and AIDS, the virus attack which one? They attack CD4. Therefore, they attack CD4 if you don't have T helper cells. If you don't have T helper cells, therefore, you cannot activate B cells. If you cannot activate B cells, therefore, you cannot kill anything that come into your body. That means you don't have antibodies to kill anything that come into your body. Everything, you don't have the long-lasting acquire immunity that you could develop because you don't have the B cells. Why don't you have the B cells? Oh, because you don't have the T cells that activate the B cells. So you don't have this Eve to help you around. You don't have the Eve to help support your cells. Your cell will die quicker. Your neutrophils start dying quicker. Your macrophage start to dying quicker. So you don't have these guys to help them out. Okay. So these are water boy. These are nurses. These are folks that activate the B cells. That's a huge thing to remember. And they activate the B cell with MHC2. Major histocompatibility 2, something to note and something to remember because a huge thing to remember, okay, that MHC2 has to do with T helper cells, also has to do with activating the B cells. So Eve has a special key now, since it's been activated from the dendritic cell, have that special key to go and start a B cell, and that special key is on the outside of the body on a little bridge called MHC2. MHC, think of it like a little key, the base of the key, where you think of old skeleton key, you think of those old skeleton key, okay? Let me draw those, okay? So old skeleton key. So the MHC2 is this part of the key, okay? Is the head part of the key, whereas the N is the antigen part, specific antigen that will fit into the B cells, that will activate the B cells. Okay, so just know that MHC2, major histocompatibility, so all of that means is just the beginning of that key, just the receptor. That's all it is, okay? Fancy term. All it is just tiny little receptor of that base of the key. That's all it is. That's all you need to know, that when we talk about MHC2, think of B cells, think of T helper cells, okay? T helper cell also divided into 3. You have Th1, Th2, and Th17. Those are the 3 main ones. All of these actually release something called cytokine. Th1 has to do with inflammation. TNF, which is tumor necrosing factor. So these guys are killing tumors. Anytime you have inflammation, these guys will kind of put it out as well. So it does a little bit of killing as well. Also help with viruses and bacteria when they come in. Th2 help with allergy and parasites. They also secrete interleukin and 4, 5, and 13. All of those help fight the allergy and parasite. Th17, that's also has to do with wound healing and inflammation and fungus. They have 17, 21, and 22. So, okay, all of these, again, think of a big picture. T helper cell, they're cheerleaders. They just cheering people on. They activate the B cells. They help supporting other people. Every now and then they do help. They're wearing many hats. So sometimes they wear other hats by killing the viruses, bacteria. They help with allergy and parasite, and they help with wound healing and fungus as well. Okay, so they have other hats that they wear. But the main hat, just know that they actually activate B cells. Other type of T cells, you have cytotoxic T cells, regulatory T cells, and memory T cells. So cytotoxic T cell has to do with CD8. So CD8 think of major histocompatibility 1, MHC1. So these guys are Rambos. So they are assassin, a Rambo, or hitman. So think of them that way. So they would go, just like in the movie WALL-E, when Eve start using the gun, start shooting everyone. So these guys, once they are made in the lymph node, they would go back into the front line right away. They actually would travel in the blood and travel to the front line and start fighting, start killing those bacteria right away. So they are specifically target. Okay, they are specific. It's like macrophages and neutrophil. Those are non-specific, but these guys, they know exactly who to kill. So they would go and hit those folks. Okay, so they just go just with a big gun, just go like a big gun, just start killing these bacteria, just specific bacteria, just start killing them. Okay, regulatory T cells. These are like police patrollers. These are actually police patroller, kind of patrol in your blood, just to make sure that you're not infected, kind of preventing your body to kill itself. So with these guys, with regulatory T cells, really help with autoimmune disease, preventing your immune system go haywire, go crazy, and start attacking yourself. They kill them first. They kill these folks first. So kind of being a police, making sure that everything is in order, making sure that everything is good to go. And you could see in the picture on the bottom here, they make them a little policeman. Okay, so that's the regulatory T cells. Memory T cells, these I always think of them as spies. So they actually spies in your blood to attack, to see whether any of those bad guys pops back up again. If they pops back up, they will kill them right away. So memory T cells kill those folks. Same thing that I was just mentioned to you, but more in a complex way. If you want to read this way, same thing, but okay. The story is not in there yet. Okay, story continues on. Again, T cells, where T cells, who actually would come and activate B cells? If you're saying T helper cell, you are correct. Yes, very good. So T helper cells actually go deeper inside the lymph node. Okay, go deeper inside the lymph node. So they will travel down. Oh, I meant to change these. They travel down deeper inside the lymph node. Okay, I meant to change these to R2D2. So R2D2s quietly sleeping inside your big lymph node. Okay, R2D2 is quietly sleeping inside your lymph node, and we call that naive B cells. Same thing, a naive B cells, and same process like the way T cell was activated. The T cells, these T helper cells, will go each one by one to see whether that MHC2, yes, MHC2 fit into these R2D2s. Okay. Again, I meant to change the picture to R2D2. Sorry about that. I'll change that later on. So once these T cells find the right R2D2, they go in and activate, and the R2D2 start again to multiply, replicating over and over again, just like the B cells, just like the T cells. Same process happened, same name, clonal selection, clonal duplication, clonal expansion. Okay, so all of those are the same thing. So they start replicating itself, okay, into B cells, many different B cells. Okay, B cell does a little bit different than T cells. T cells make several of them, right? T cell have different type of T cells. B cells only does one thing. And what they do is they produce antibodies. So again, they activated by who? They activated by T helper cells with CD4 and MHC2. Very good, MHC2 and CD4. Okay, so B cells activated by T cells, T helper cells, and they produce antibodies. I always compare antibodies are like missiles. Okay, missiles. So R2D2 will produce tons and tons of missiles. How many? Just imagine this. You actually produce billions of billions and billions of antibody in a span of 3 or 4 days. Okay, so you produce a whole bunch of these antibodies, not just one or two. We talk about billions and billions loads of antibodies. Okay, there are 5 of them that you need to know. We will touch on this again, but I'm going to mention it now, and you're going to know it now. It's going to be the same thing. So IgA, IgD, IgE, IgG, and IgM. These are the 5 Ig immunoglobulin. So this is what they make, immunoglobulins. So these missiles. Okay. IgA is in your tears, in your breast milk, and usually pass on from your mom. Okay, IgA is from your breast milk, your mom, and your tears, any liquid, your saliva, all of those, the liquidy stuff in your body have IgA in them. Okay. IgD, we had no clue what IgD is. We discovered it in 1980, 1990s, and since then we still have no clue what it does. We test everything and we don't know what it does. So more likely we won't test you on your tests. So just know IgA, E, G, and M. You don't need to know D. Okay. IgE, E for allergy. E for allergy, so E for allergies. Okay, IgG, the way I remember G is gold. Okay, gold. So it's old infection. Any type of old infection is IgG. So especially now when we talk about coronavirus, if you want to do a serology test to see whether you have IgG, so you have IgG for coronavirus, whether you had them before. If you had them, you will develop IgG. Not always, though. That's not always. Some people may not develop IgGs. Sometimes you had the disease, let's say you had a flu, and you may not develop the IgGs. So when we give you vaccine, our hope is you actually produce IgG. That's the hope. You also could produce IgM. M is for MAC, okay? MAC or acute infection. So that means you have that going on now. So let's say someone who actually have COVID-19 and just kind of still not truly getting over the symptoms. Let's say you 1 week or 2 weeks into it, and you still go and test for antibodies. You may see IgM floating around because you still have the disease. You're not truly getting rid of the disease yet, so you have that IgM floating around. Whereas if you had them before, you had like a couple months ago, you might see a lot of IgG floating around. Okay, the memory B cells, that's the other one that B cells make. This is the spy again. These kind of prevent the future attacks from happening. Okay, so what happened? Okay, so this is again your T cells. T helper cells activate B cells. Okay, just remember that the T helper cells come in and activate this B cell, wake up the R2D2. Okay, so now let's get back to our front line. We get back to our field. Okay, so first you have the macrophages trying to hold things tight. Again, you have neutrophils. These guys start killing by a minute. Now we have cytotoxic T cell, the Rambos. Okay, the Rambo of the T cells come in and help out as well, start killing these folks. So now we have 3 folks trying to kill and do the same job, killing these folks. Okay. On top of that, you have the T helper cells here that help support, keep macrophage growing. Like, hey, don't die yet, just keep going, okay? Just don't die. Then you have the B cells come along. You have these activated B cells come in. And what do they produce? They produce antibodies. Yes, they produce these missiles, antibodies. Okay, so the antibodies will start hitting. So what happened is, this is just to show you what it looks like. So what the antibody does is actually they recognize these bugs because of the way they made and how they actually made. So they recognize these bugs and they attach themselves on onto the bug itself, onto the bacteria. Once they attach themselves onto the bacteria, it's an easy target for other people to actually kill them. So macrophage are very notable, very known to actually pick up these. Does a couple of things though, antibodies. So one, it actually prevents these guys to go into your body, into your other cells to replicate. This is very helpful in terms of viruses. So virus cannot go into your cells to replicate anymore once it actually have these antibody attached onto them. Two, it slow them down. It slow these guys way down, and then it's kind of easy for them to recognize. Think of like a duck here, with the cone of shame. No, I don't like the cone of shame. So the cone of shame kind of stand out. Everyone notice it, everyone see it, so everyone could come and kill these bugs very easily. Okay, so they cannot hide anywhere. They're like, oh yeah, I see you right away. I see you from far away. Okay, so now we have tons of antibody floating around, tons of antibody attached onto these bacteria, and now the battle start to shift. Okay, you have these folks start killing out these bacteria, and then bacteria start dying. Okay, one by one, and eventually the battle is over. Okay, we won the battle. Get rid of all these bacteria. So once the battle is over, guess what? This is called clonal deletion. So they start dying out. They actually start killing itself. Like, you don't need me anymore. Everyone else is dead. So let's just kill myself. I'm just gonna kill everyone else. So everyone else left and gone. So what you're gonna have left is the memory B cells and the memory T cells that actually are left. Okay, memory T cells and memory B cells. Okay. So this is just the story of the immune system. I hope that this story makes sense to you. If it does not, you want to repeat it again and just trying to understand it. One thing I did not cover was where is B cells actually made. B cell is made in the bone marrow as well, but unlike T cell mature in the thymus. B for bone, so B cells mature inside the bone marrow. So B cell mature inside the bone marrows. Okay. So ask yourself as you go through these simple questions as a story about immunology. Who's the first line of defense when you actually have bacteria comes in? Who comes in first? If you answer macrophage, that's the correct answer. Macrophage. What is the first thing macrophage does aside from eating these bacteria? So you ask yourself these questions, and then what does it do next? What does macrophage do next after release his nitric oxide and prostaglandin to bring the water? What's the purpose of the water that they bring in? What does that cause? That causes swelling. What does it do next is actually bring in the leukocytes. How do they pick the leukocyte? Again, bacteria is for neutrophils, viruses for lymphocytes. Then what's next? If they cannot control the battle, who do they go to? They call dendritic cell. Dendritic cell comes in, kill one of the bacteria, wear it on their head, and then they head to the next nearest lymph node. Takes a few days to get there. And who do they come in touch with? They come in touch with T cells, naive T cells. They activate the naive T cells to become different type of T cells. There are 4 of them who activate B cells. T helper cell activate B cells. So as you go through the story, kind of repeat that. Ask yourself those questions. Okay. And I cover all of these. I cover these slides that you see here, all of them. Clonal diversity, that means you have different think of it like different Eve that needs to be activated. They have different keys to be activated. Same thing with B cells. They have R2D2s. They have just different keys to activate them. So it's that's why they call it clonal diversity. Clonal selection, you have to go one by one to find the right one to activate. Okay. We talk about cell-mediated humoral. We talk about majority of these. You do need to know this. I put a little heart here. You do need to know this differences of CD markers. We talk about CD4, CD8. CD4 again has to do with T helper cells. CD8 has to do with cytotoxic killer cells. CD3 are in both CD4 and CD8. You need both of them to make T helper cells. You need CD3, CD4. And then cytotoxic T cell, you need CD3 and CD8 to make them. Okay. CD2 and 1, those are, one is for the antigen presenting cell for TB, and 2 is for putting the molecules together, kind of tightening them up together. Okay. So we talk about B cells, again, same thing. Dendritic cells here come in, activate the T cells with MHC2, then T cell then go activate B cells with that MHC2. Okay. B cells then release antibodies right here. Antibody go attach onto the pathogen itself or antigen, so other folks would come in and kill it. Okay. Antibody functions, there's lots of function. The key terms I want you to remember, and I will mention this in another video that has to do with blood typing, so watch that video. But what it does is agglutination. That's mean clumping. That's a fancy term of clumping. So again, if you're seeing these folks, you have tons of these folks here, right? So these folks cannot go anywhere because these antibody actually attach onto them. And these antibody kind of put them together. They actually clumps them together, clump these folks together. So that's part of clumping, okay, agglutination. It works really well with bacteria, works well with antigens, including when you put someone else's blood into your body. So let's say you have a type O and you actually put type A into your type O blood, you will get agglutination very easily. Okay. Another thing it does is neutralize the location, neutralize the antigen, so make it stop replicating or going into the cells to kill other cells. Okay. We talked about this, CD4, CD8, cytotoxic T cell versus T helper cells. We talked about this as well, subset Th1, T helper 1, T helper 2, and T helper 17. So I explained all these already. So dendritic cells, macrophage, antigen presenting cells, those are barbarian, right? Barbaric folks. We talk about T cells, different type of T cell, T memory cells, T regulatory cells. We talk about those already. Okay. Let's move on to, we also talk about IgA, IgD, IgE, IgG, and IgM. So all that covered. Next one, we haven't talked about this guy. This is called natural killer cells, or NK cells. Okay, NK cell or natural killer cells. So natural killer cell, they actually work with IgG. So they are part of adaptive or humoral, acquire immunity. Okay, so these guys are, think of them like a hitman, a very specific hitman. They actually have specifically kill certain type of cells or certain type of pathogens. Okay, so they specifically kill certain type of pathogen because of these receptors that they have. Okay, they will know the cell that actually caused infected by viruses. They know which cell infected by cancer, so they will actually release things to actually kill these folks. They release the complement system activated by the complement system, which we'll talk about that. You're gonna look at that in the other videos as well. Okay. So natural killer cells are complement to cytotoxic T cells. They complement to cytotoxic T cell. They also work alongside IgG to actually help kill stuff. So this is something you should know. Something you should know. So they kind of work on both sides. They work with the B cells. They also work with the T cells as well. Both. Okay. Okay, let's see. So we're gonna talk again complement system. What I want you to do, and I'm gonna post this up on the your website, your announcement. But where did it go? Let's see. There's a pretty good video on this, and actually on both of these, if you want to watch them. I actually make it a little shorter, but this video is actually really good about complement system. You don't need to know very detailed information of the complement system, but you just need to know simple ideas. And if you want to kind of rewatch what I just told you, these are a little bit more kind of shorter and even more vague regarding the system, but similar. Actually has a pretty good graphic. You want to look at those. Okay. But that's the complement system. You could watch the YouTube video on that one. Clotting system, I'm going to actually have another video about clotting system. I'm going to go in a whole lot deeper because a lot of people kind of seem to be struggle with just a simple idea of clotting system. Okay, kinin has to do with your inflammation, coagulation, blood regulation, and pain perception. This is something you should know. I would also I would know this page for sure. I definitely would know this page. Why? Because you will see some of it in your exam. Okay. You need to know what interleukin 1 is. It actually causes the fever. Interleukin 10 is anti-inflammatory. Interferons usually is respond to the viral infection. TNF, tumor necrosing factor, has to do with fighting cells that actually become necrosis. Okay, so might want to know those information. Chemokine, mast cell, you do need to know different type of mast cells. Mast cell, think of histamine. Remember I mentioned that earlier is part of your innate immunity. Your mast cell is histamine production. And there's different type of histamine. You have H1, has to do with your lungs, bronchi and bronchoconstriction. H2, that's in your stomach, right? Stomach mucosa. You talk about H2 blocker. So H2 blocker actually has to do with your stomach acid mucosa. We're going to cover that again in your GI when we talk about GI. H3 has to do with your neurotransmitter in your brain. H4 has to do with immune response. Okay, just know what each different H are. That would be great. Prostaglandin, we talk about that a little bit, has to do with leukocyte and also induce pain as well. So it can also induce like vasodilation and other things as well that comes along with it. Wound healing has to do with dehiscing. Dehiscing, that's closing of the wound improperly. You could actually dehiss, causing infection, so sepsis. Some of these, again, you could review on your own. Pretty easy, straightforward. This one you definitely need to know. You definitely need to know this one. Different type of hypersensitivities, reactions. You have type 1, 2, 3, and 4. The mnemonic is acid, ACID. Type 1 has to do with allergies, IgE mediated, meaning that if you're allergic to something that's pretty acute, if you remember movie Hitch by Will Smith, his face just popped up because he's allergic to certain things, then that's type 1. Type 2 has to do with antibodies. You actually become reactive to antibodies, certain antibodies, like people who have Goodpasture syndrome or hyperacute graft rejection. All of those is cytotoxic antibodies. Type 3 has to do with your immune system, IgM, IgG. Like you have, lupus, you have sickle cells. Not sickle cell, sorry, serum sickness, polyarthritis nodosa. All of these has to do with your immune system, like autoimmune disease kind of will go along with type 3, more likely. And last one is type 4, is delay response, so it actually takes a few days, take a while before you actually react to it. So that's the delay response, that's type 4. Okay. Those are just summary of it, pretty easy. I would just remember that chart, but the same information here, basically. Just explain a little bit more, but I would just remember that chart and make it easier for you guys. Okay. Last part is autoimmune disorder. We're going to talk about this one, ABO type, in a different, in the RH system as well, in a different video, and you're going to watch those. Graft rejection, you guys, know about some of these stuff. So, infections, you have incubation, prodromal period, invasion, and convalescence. So 4 stages of infections. Each disease has different ways of infection, prodromal period, different ways of entering your body. Like, let's say, COVID-19, you enter through your nose and your mouth. Mechanism of action, how disease actually damages cells, goes down into your lungs, kind of attacking your immune system, making your immune system work against your own body, attacking yourself, causing your lungs to actually to become infected, inflame, and then you also infected with bacteria infection, causing pneumonia, and that's how you end up in a ventilator and tubation. So different disease has different things on these. Okay, you definitely know these terms by now: endemic, epidemic, and pandemic. We are the pandemic, like we're using now. Technically speaking, this is a very sensitive term to CDC and to WHO, World Health Organization. So they don't usually lightly use the word pandemic unless it's what we are suffering now. Even epidemic, that's something they want to avoid as well. So endemic is in a smaller population within a town, a city, that's endemic. So bacterial infection, usually you have the gram-positive versus gram-negative bacteria, different type of infection. There are good, there are bad bacteria usually. And usually we use a complement system. Basically what we do is we make holes in the bacteria. We actually create a huge hole in the bacteria, causing all the content to actually come out. In the video of complement, you will see as one part of it explain about this, causing all the contents spill out from the bacteria. Very effective way of actually killing it. So that's the complement system. One of the complement systems we use. Okay. There are endotoxin and exotoxin, depending on the type of bacteria that can cause. So Fungal infection, these you're definitely going to see. We're going to talk more about it in derm and also in reproductive system as well. Candida albicans, we can talk more about that. Parasitic infections, lovely stuff like parasite, hookworm, roundworm. I'm going to show you when we talk about GI, talking about some of these. Parasite, flea, lysis, all the lovely stuff. Viruses, we talk about viruses. We will get into a little bit more when we get into different strand of viruses, like herpes, common cold, flu. So this is our nemesis. I always say this, that we are one virus away from wiping half of our population, and that's always true. So we definitely human species are very, very fragile, and these viruses mutate all the time. Even COVID-19 that we're experiencing, we're not sure how many times it's actually been mutated. So at this point, because there's so many symptoms actually people are experiencing, which is not even funny. And comparing to other diseases, most diseases are pretty straightforward, have one or two symptoms, pretty straightforward. Now we just keep learning more complication and things that actually happen. Okay. So AIDS, we talk about a little bit about AIDS. AIDS has to do with, again, T helper cell, because it's attacking the CD4 T helper cell. Without T helper cells, that means you have no B cells. No B cells. When you have no B cells, that means you have no antibodies. No antibodies, you can't really fight disease. So, huge problem. Okay. And you guys could review these. Pretty straightforward information. You guys know these before, I'm sure. If you want me to review them more in detail, let me know during the class, and I could cover them more in details. Okay. Last but not least, one quick concept I want to cover, and then we are done. So when we talk about stress, you probably don't know what stress is, none of you, especially you're working, going to school, having family, so you have no clue what stress is all about, right? So stress actually go into different stages that you need to know. First stage is called the alarm stage. Right now, all of you probably going through this right now. You're going through the alarm stage. This is your brand new class. Beginning of the semester, you're going through the alarm stage. When you hit the midterm, you're gonna get to the resistance stage. This is when you start adapting, just kind of mulling along, just kind of trying to get through, keep up with all the work. That's when your cortisol your adrenaline start to kicks in. You're just gonna on that cruise control kind of stage. After your midterm, after your final, you're gonna go through the exhaustion stage. You are done. You are exhausted. You have a week off between your classes. This is when you're gonna go kaput. You're just gonna sleep all day in your house. So this is the exhaustion state. Okay. So remember this. You're gonna see this on your exam. Very important to know. Dr. Selye has to do with he studies stress quite a bit, and how we actually respond to stress. It's not the stress itself, because stress itself can be the same, but it's how you respond to your stress goes a long way. If you actually responded negatively, you actually have tons of diseases. If you responded in a positive way, you actually have a much better outlook, less diseases. Stress definitely can kill you. It is one of the things that can kill you. We've seen it in animal kingdom. We have scientists who actually test on monkeys and did a whole study of the whole population, a huge study. So the results is the same over and over again, that the stress can kill you, and you just have to know how to manage stress. It's not because of the stress itself. It's not of the stressors, of different type of stressor, but rather of how you cope with those stress, how you deal with them. A good coping mechanism is always helpful. cortisol and immune system. Interestingly, if you have high stress, your T1, your T helper cell 1 will actually be suppressed, which means that you have more prone to infection. So your infection will go up. T2, on the other hand, is stimulated. T2 is start killing off things. You remember your T2, it actually are cytokines. You just respond with a whole lot more things. So this gonna cause you inflammation in your blood. This causing your atherosclerosis, your arteriosclerosis. So your blood will become inflamed all the time. We're going to talk more about that in cardiology. Okay, so that's not good either way. Okay. Other hormones, we'll cover some of these hormones in the endocrine section. And might want to know these, like cortisol has to do with your, your stress hormone. Can release some of these hormones, and we will talk more about these in the endocrine section. I think as we age, depending on how you cope with your stress, if you're coping well, then you actually will live longer, your skin will look better, you look younger. If you don't cope too well with stress, then you're going to look a lot worse, okay? You're going to have tons of free radicals that damaging your cells, your blood. You're going to have higher cholesterol level, all kinds of things, hypertension, you name it, obesity, diabetes, so on and so forth. And that's it, folks. Wow, long video. I'm so sorry, but it's a lot of information they're trying to cover. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully it actually makes you understand a little bit better with immunology and make immunology not as scary as it usually is. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for watching, again, listening. Click like or click subscribe for new videos. Have a wonderful day.